Okay, so you know Little Red Riding Hood, right? Sweet girl, red cloak, basket of treats, a wolf with boundary issues, cute, cozy, fairy tale vibes. Yeah, forget all of that because the original versions of the story, they are absolutely unhinged. I mean it. This stuff I found in old French folktale archives had me sitting there like, excuse me, this is what they were telling children? And the best part? These versions existed long before the Grimms came in and cleaned everything up like two 19th century babysitters saying, nope, kids don't need to know that. So let me set the mood for you. Imagine a tiny village in medieval France. It's light, houses are dark, the forest is basically a lawless zone full of things that move after sunset. Everyone is terrified of everything. Wild animals, strangers, the dark, you name it. And into that world, parents are telling their kids a bedtime story that goes something like, listen carefully, because if you wander off alone, something out there will trick you. It won't look dangerous. It will sound friendly. But once it gets close enough, oh, sweetie, you are done. And kids are just supposed to sleep after that. So no, Red Riding Hood was not originally a cute first adventure. It was more like a horror story disguised as a life lesson. And the deeper you go, the worse. And somehow funnier it gets. Like the kind of funny where you're laughing because you don't know how else to process it. Because trust me, the French versions alone could be a whole crime documentary. There's a version where the girl literally sits down in grandma's house and... Okay, I'm not going to spoil it yet. Just know that the part before she meets the wolf, already deeply concerning. And by the time we get to the iconic "What big eyes you have seen," girl, you're gonna understand why old folk tales need warning labels. So buckle up because Red Riding Hood was not meant for children. It was meant to keep children alive. And the weirdest part, it worked. Ready? Let's go into the oldest French versions. The ones absolutely no one warned you about. Alright, so now we are going straight into the original French chaos. And I promise you, if you only know the sweet bedtime version, you are not ready for this. The earliest known tale, the one folklorists call the story of the grandmother, is basically Red Riding Hood with the safety filters ripped off. No Grimm brothers, no woodsman, no rescue. Just raw, medieval, fear-based storytelling. So the girl shows up at her grandmother's house, right? Everything looks almost normal. Almost. And the moment she steps inside, things get weird fast. The creature in the bed, not always a wolf, sometimes more like a wild man or a wolf-man hybrid, speaks in a strange voice. He asks her to put down what she's carrying. And here's where it gets absolutely unhinged. In several versions collected in the French countryside during 19th century, the girl is told to place some food on the table. She does. She eats it. And then the creature casually lets her know she just ate her own grandmother. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. It was literally written as grandma's flesh and blood, served as a meal. Imagine you are a child hearing that right before bed. Imagine being the parent thinking, yes, this is appropriate. Night night. And it does not stop there. Because right after that, the creature says something like, take off your clothes and come lie with me. Now, this is a crucial. Folklorists agree this scene was not meant to be romantic or spicy. It was about power, control, vulnerability. Medieval stories used stripped-down scenes to show the girl losing every layer of safety she had left. It was the narrative way of saying, you are in danger, all illusions are gone. Anyway, the girl begins removing her clothes piece by piece, and each time she asks where she should put them. The creature answers with lines like, throw it in a fire, you won't need it anymore. If you ever wondered where modern horrors gets its tone, here you go. And then we get to the bed. The famous, what big eyes you have dialogue. But these early versions, it wasn't playful or charming. It was a slow realization the moment the girl notices every detail that doesn't belong. Now, here's the one good thing in this absolute nightmare of a folktale. In some French versions, she escapes. She uses her brain, not a woodsman. She tells the creature she needs to use the bathroom outside. He ties a rope to her so she won't run away. She slips out, ties the rope to a tree or bucket, and books it. Gone. Brilliant. But in most versions, she doesn't make it. The French storytellers weren't playing around. They wanted kids to learn the lesson the hard way. If you talk to the wrong stranger, you won't get a heroic rescue. You won't get a second chance. You simply won't make it home. So when I say the original story was dark, I mean medieval level dark. It was designed to scare kids into staying close to home, and honestly, mission accomplished. Alright, take a breath, get a drink. Next up, things get even weirder. Because in some early versions, the wolf doesn't just talk, he takes off his own fur. A whole different level of creepy is coming. So let's move into one of the strangest details people never talk about. Because we all know the wolf pretends to be grandma. Cute head, nightgown, whatever. But in some old European retellings, the transformation gets extremely literal. The wolf doesn't just hop into bed wearing grandma's clothes. He takes off his own fur, like it's a jacket, like he's clocking out after a long shift. There are French and Alpine variants where the creature hangs his fur on a nail next to the bed, like, let me just slip into something more comfortable, your grandmother's entire identity. This detail makes folklorists lose their minds because that moment isn't about fashion or realism, it's symbolic. Old storytellers used the act of undressing as a signal that something was crossing a boundary it should absolutely not cross. It was a way of saying, this creature is pretending to be human now. You are not safe. And it gets even creepier when you pair it with what the girl is told to do. Because in those same versions, the ones with the fur on the nail, she is removing her clothes too, layer by layer, both of them shedding something. It creates this uncomfortable, off-balance moment where the power dynamic becomes crystal clear. He is disguising himself to get closer. She's losing her defenses because she doesn't realize she's in danger yet. A perfect storm of trust and deception. And here's the detail that gives everyone goosebumps. When folklorists collected these versions in the 1800s, the storytellers never treated the wolf like a real animal. Not a single one said, oh yeah, wolves can do that. They told it the way you would tell a ghost story. Matter of fact, like it was completely normal for a creature to peel off its own skin. Because back then, people weren't afraid of actual wolves. They were afraid of shapeshifters. Men who weren't what they claimed to be. Creatures who could imitate, deceive, blend in. And suddenly the wolf taking off his fur becomes a whole new kind of terrifying. It's not an animal you are meant to fear. It's the thing pretending to be human. This is where some scholars say Little Red Riding Hood shifts from being a cautionary tale about wandering children into something much older. Stories about predators in human society. People who hide who they are. People who wear the skin of someone safe. And honestly, once you see that layer, the whole story hits differently. The girl standing in front of the bed and noticing the details. The eyes, the ears, the teeth is basically the moment your brain finally catches up to your instincts. When all the little red flags you ignored suddenly line up and become the full picture. That familiar voice that doesn't sound quite right. The face that looks almost normal. That feeling you can't shake. Every old version of the tale is trying to tell the same thing. Danger doesn't always look dangerous at first. And the wolf removing his fur, that's the moment the disguise slips. The moment the illusion collapses. The moment she realizes she's face to face with something that was never what it pretended to be. All right, deep breath. Because we are about to travel around the world, and I promise you, other cultures took this story and said, let's make it even more unhinged. If you think the wolf peeling off his own fur was weird, oh honey, other cultures look at that and said, cute. Let's crank the nightmare dial to 11. Because once folklorists started collecting global versions of this tale, it became obvious that every country has its own idea of what the wolf should be, and none of them held back. The Italian storytellers were the first to throw hands. They said, wolf? No, thank you. Let's make him a fox, or a man, or a man-fox hybrid. Just full chaotic energy. One of the oldest Italian variants, the fake grandmother, has this creature pretending to be grandma. Yes, but everything around him feels wrong from the moment the girl walks in. Her grandmother's voice? Too low. Her mannerism? Off. Her bed? Smells weird. And the girl isn't some helpless child here. She starts noticing clues. One by one, until she's like, I need to step outside for a second. Ties a rope to a chair and sprints. Honestly, she's the blueprint for every final girl in every horror movie ever made. Meanwhile, the Alpine region saw all this and went, okay, but what if the creature's special ability isn't its teeth, but its voice? And these storytellers were dead serious. In some Swiss and Austrian versions, the creature's defining power is perfect vocal mimicry, not cute imitation, like bone-chilling, dead-on impersonation of someone you trust. Imagine being a medieval villager. The sun has gone down, candles are burning low, and something outside knocks on your door, speaking in your mother's voice. No wonder people locked everything at night. But then you get to East Asia, and the folklore gets a different flavor entirely. In China, the wolf becomes a tiger, because in those regions, tigers were the apex predator everyone actually feared. The story is called The Tiger Grandmother, and it's just as unhinged as it sounds. A tiger puts on grandma's clothes. A tiger climbs into grandma's bed. A tiger pretends to be sweet and frail. And the kids, because yes, sometimes it's multiple children, slowly realize things don't add up. The voice is too rough, the hands are too big, the breeding is wrong. In many versions, the children manage to escape on their own. They climb a tree, outsmart the tiger, and basically invent fight or flight centuries before psychology textbooks did. And then Korea steps into the chat. It's not one child wandering around, it's siblings. Most often two sisters, sometimes a brother and a sister, depending on the region. And these kids, oh, they are not playing the helpless role. They are sharp. They are observant. They are thinking 3 steps ahead while a creature disguised as a family member tries to sneak its way into their home. And instead of freezing or waiting to be saved, they outsmart it. They trick the creature, escape together, and never once give off victim energy. It's all strategy and survival instincts. Honestly, kind of iconic. What's wild is how every region took the same core nightmare, a dangerous being wearing a familiar identity, and translated it to their own fears. Europe feared the deep, unpredictable woods. China feared tigers slipping too close to human homes. The Alpine regions fear creatures that could mimic the voice of people they loved. Italy feared shapeshifters who blurred the line between human and animal. Korea feared deceptive spirits and predatory beings that slept into domestic spaces. Different places, different monsters, but the same pulse underneath. Danger doesn't always introduce itself as danger. Sometimes it walks in wearing someone else's face. And if that gives you chills, good. Because the next chapter goes even deeper into the versions where the wolf stops being an animal at all and turns into something a little more familiar than anyone wants to admit. Alright, grab your drink because this is where the story gets way too close to real life. Up until now, the wolf has been an animal. A creature, a tiger, a foxman, a shapeshifter, a creepy spirit. You know, the usual bedtime story material apparently. But in some of the oldest European tellings, especially the ones folklorists dug up from rural oral traditions, the wolf isn't an animal at all. He's a man. A very human man. And honestly, that changes the entire vibe of the story, because suddenly the whole thing stops being about the wilderness and starts being about predators that live among people, not monsters, not supernatural beings, just someone who blends in perfectly, which is way scarier. Folklorists like Jig Zibes and Maria Tatar point out that before Perrault turned the villain into a literal wolf, older versions often use the word bzu or werewolf interchangeably with man. And the line between man and monster was left deliberately blurry. Was he a shapeshifter? Was he pretending? Was he just a dangerous guy villagers warned their kids about? Nobody clarified, because the point wasn't the creature. The point was the deception. There are versions where the wolf knocks on the door sounding exactly like the grandmother. No magic, no transformation, just an imitation that feels a little too real. Versions where he uses charm instead of teeth, questions instead of claws, flattery instead of snarling. He follows the girl. He asks where she's going. He casually collects information the same way the wolf does in the Grimm version. Except here, it's painfully, uncomfortably human. And once you realize that, the whole story shifts. This isn't about wildlife. This is about recognizing danger when it looks polite. It's about trusting instincts over appearances. It's about how vulnerability, youth, and inexperience were exploited long before fairy tales were printed. It's about real warnings disguised as bedtime stories, because medieval parents didn't sugarcoat anything. And here's the part that keeps coming up in folklore analysis. The more human the wolf becomes, the more the story becomes a survival lesson. Not obedience, not punishment, not follow the rules or else. a literal survival lesson. Some versions even open with a line like, "The girl met a zoo on the road," which was just shorthand for a dangerous man pretending to be harmless. No fur, no fangs, just a mask. And the moral becomes painfully clear. Not all wolves walk on four legs. It's eerie how old this idea is, how deeply it's woven into human storytelling, and how relevant it still feels today. Like centuries pass, cultures shift, technology changes, but this one fear stays the same. Which is exactly why the final chapter hits different. Because once you strip the wolf of fur and claws and fairy tale drama, what's left is the truth people didn't want to say out loud. Once you realize the wolf didn't need fur, claws, or glowing eyes to be terrifying, the whole legend takes a different shape. Because suddenly you are not dealing with a forest predator. You are dealing with something every society has always feared. Danger that knows how to smile. And this is the moment where people usually go, okay, so why did this bizarre little tale survive for so many centuries? Why this story out of all the horrifying bedtime content medieval people cooked up? Here's the uncomfortable answer folklorists keep circling back to. Little Red Riding Hood lasted because it said something people were scared to admit out loud. Not all threats come from the dark. Some walk alongside you in broad daylight. Some know your name. Some ask friendly questions. Some show up at your door using a voice you recognize. That's why the wolf kept shifting forms from country to country. He had to match whatever real danger people feared at the time. In France, where travelers disappeared on forest paths, the wolf had fur. In Italy, where folklore blurred humans with foxes and werewolves, he became a shapeshifter. In alpine villages, where people feared imitators slipping into their homes, he copied voices. In China, where tigers were an actual survival threat, he wore stripes instead of fur. And in Korea, where folklore often warned about deceptive spirits, the creature pretended to be family. Different cultures, different monsters, same message. The danger isn't the creature, it's the disguise. And here's the wildest part. As centuries passed, the monstrous details faded. The bloodier scenes got softened. The eating people got cut, thank God. But the disguise part, that stayed untouched. Because that's the part people recognized. That's the part that still feels painfully modern. We live in a world where most of us will never be chased by a wolf. But every one of us will meet someone who isn't what they pretend to be. Someone who seems safe until they aren't. Someone who uses charm as bait instead of teeth. Someone who asks too many casual questions. Someone who watches for the moment you step off the path. And maybe that's why this story refuses to fade into museum-level folklore. It keeps mutating because we keep mutating. New disguises, new dangers, new versions of the wolf. The real core of the tale has never been the forest, never been the cloak, never ever been the girl. It's the warning that slips under the skin a little too easily. Pay attention to the things that almost feel right. The almost safe places. The almost familiar voices. The almost trustworthy people. Because danger rarely walks in announcing itself. It walks in wearing something recognizable. And Little Red Riding Hood, in every version, every country, every twist, is the girl who teaches us what happens when you ignore the tiny instinct that whispers, something here doesn't fit. That instinct That's the real hero of the story. Not the woodsman, and not the girl, not any of the edited moral lessons. It's the part of you that knows when the costume is too perfect. And the moment you start listening to it, you stop being Little Red. You become the person who walks through the forest and sees the wolf long before he gets the chance to smile.